Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Our first story today is all about revenge served professionally and very slowly. A rude call center rep decided to treat one older employee like trash. What she didn't know was that her coworker had time, patience, and a plan. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. The sweet coworker and the Southern nightmare. My coworker's a very sweet little old Asian lady. She speaks with the accent and grammar of someone who spent most of their life speaking a language other than English. She also happens to be incredibly smart, kind, and good at her job, as well as a consummate professional. I, however, am not a consummate professional, as you're about to find out. We've been dealing with this phone rep that we had to call as part of our job. Of all the reps, this lady was the hardest to deal with. She spoke with a Southern accent that was so thick it was nearly impossible to understand, even for me, and I'm a native lifelong English speaker. I don't bring this up because there's a problem with having an accent, but rather to highlight the hypocrisy of the situation. Asked a multitude of extra questions none of her counterparts asked, and required extra steps for us to look up things for her. She also wasn't the nicest. She was snarky, terse, and generally unhelpful. I complained about her a couple of times, but nothing was done about it. One day, my coworker had her on speakerphone, and I overheard the way she was talking to her, and oh boy, I was not happy. Somehow, my coworker could understand her better than I could, so tell me why this chick was talking to my coworker like she was the dirt on the bottom of her shoe? It was in the way she repeated things verbatim if my coworker didn't give her exactly the answer she wanted. Answers that she oftentimes already knew but still asked just to be a pain. Sighed and groaned like she was in abject misery, refused to answer my coworker's questions, and the tone of utter disgust and disdain in her voice. This lady was obnoxious to me and to others who I'd talked to about her, but downright repugnant to my colleague. The more I thought about it, the more I realized everyone else I worked with except my one Asian coworker sounds white/American on the phone, and none of us had received that level of disrespect. There was a pattern. I determined that this lady was being racist towards my coworker, and that even if that wasn't her motive, that she was a piece of crap for talking to literally one of the sweetest and most competent people I know that way. Thus began my campaign. I knew I couldn't prove that she was anything but generally bad at customer service, but no one seemed to care about it enough to do anything about it. Therefore, I set out to make her job as hard as possible. I started taking all the calls that had to go through her when I was on shift, and I would drag the calls out as much as I could. I would put her on hold, pretend I was fumbling around for information, speak over her, and give her more information than she asked for, but really slowly, go on deranged and off-topic tangents, anything to waste her time, and always with the sweetest and cheeriest tone I could. She went from snarky and mean to anxious and desperate. I assume they had turnaround times to meet. I also continued to file complaints about her inefficiency and rude demeanor and discreetly encouraged others who worked other shifts to also slow their calls with her down. This week, I discovered she no longer works at that call center when I went to file another complaint and was told she no longer was being supervised by the person the complaints were being routed to. No telling whether or not she left of her own volition or was transferred to another department. It explains why I haven't had to deal with her this week. Either way, I call it a victory, and hopefully it was a learning experience for her. If it quacks like a duck, acts like a duck, and all the dots add up to the conclusion that it's a duck, it's probably a damn duck. Same point on racist. If she sounded, acted, and everything showed you she was racist, then screw her. Her choices and actions led to her consequences. She wants to be part of a civilized society. She needs to act like it. And our next story. My old boss was fired for misuse of funds after I mentioned my concerns to the board president. About 3 years ago, I walked away from a job I genuinely loved. Not because of the work, not because of the clients, but because of the people in charge. There were technically 2 agencies that operated under one umbrella, and both of the executive directors were absolute nightmares. Their reputations preceded them, lazy, manipulative, and completely self-serving. They gave themselves raises every year while insisting there wasn't enough money to give anyone else even a cost of living adjustment. They barely lifted a finger, took credit for everyone else's work, and had no problem publicly humiliating hardworking employees in meetings. I used to tell myself that maybe it was just temporary, that once the board realized how bad things were, they'd step in. But that moment never came. The breaking point was one particular meeting that still makes my blood boil. I'd just gone through my third miscarriage. I was exhausted, grieving, and going through a ton of medical testing. My workload was already overwhelming, so I told the directors I couldn't take on any additional tasks for the time being. Their response? They scheduled an hour-long performance meeting where they essentially tore me apart. For 60 straight minutes, they accused me of being lazy, of not meeting deadlines, of lying about my workload. One of them actually said I needed to put more effort into my work than my personal life. I sat there, numb, trying not to cry in front of them. 3 days later, I handed in my notice. What makes it even worse is that their accusations didn't just hurt, they were completely false. Every employee had to document their completed work and submit data to track productivity. After I quit, the agency's data analyst ran the numbers and found that not only was I completing all my assigned tasks, I was actually logging extra work, cleaning up other people's data and finishing tasks they'd ignored. So basically, I was doing more than my share while they publicly accused me of slacking off. Fast forward to about 2 weeks ago. I was chatting casually with my current boss, who coincidentally also happens to be the board president for one of those two agencies. He mentioned that they still hadn't managed to fill my old position 3 years later. I just laughed and said I wasn't surprised. He asked me why I'd left, so I told him the truth about the toxic leadership, the favoritism, the raises they gave themselves, the way they treated staff like garbage. Then I added, almost as an afterthought, that I always found it strange the board never audited the agencies. It was pretty obvious that something shady was going on. Well, apparently that comment hit home. The board decided to conduct a formal audit last month. One of the directors, the same one who'd called me a liar, conveniently went on a month-long vacation right as it started. And when the auditors asked her to account for her hours and her use of funds, she couldn't provide proof that she hadn't misused agency money. Last week, after 25 years with the organization, she was terminated. The official reasons? Misuse of funds, falsified timesheets, and abusing her authority by forcing staff into the office while she claimed to be working from home. I'm not normally a vindictive person, but hearing that news felt like poetic balance. The same woman who once lectured me for having poor priorities lost her entire career because she couldn't be honest or accountable. Funny how the truth always finds its way out, even if it takes a few years and a well-timed conversation to get things rolling. The most galling part of your original experience wasn't just the cruelty, it was the gaslighting. Being accused of laziness and dishonesty while you were drowning in grief and still outperforming expectations is a specific kind of psychological violence. They weren't just bad bosses, they were undermining your perception of reality to serve their own narrative. And our last story. A woman tried to steal my car while I was fixing a flat. I drive a 2008 silver Toyota Camry. Nothing flashy, but reliable as hell. The AC works, it gets great mileage, and it's paid off. Sure, there's a dent on the passenger door from when a shopping cart attacked me 2 years ago, but I love that car. It's been through Michigan winters, highway commutes, and one deer that somehow managed to live and total my bumper. If you live in Michigan, you already know the roads here are straight up apocalyptic. Potholes big enough to swallow a wheel, frost heaves that'll rearrange your spine. It's chaos. So, of course, one night after work, I hit one of those car-killing craters and bam, instant tire issue. I could feel it right away, that awful lopsided wobble that screams, "You're screwed." I turned into the first open space I saw, a small used car lot. It was quiet, lights still on, but no customers. I parked near the side, got out, and checked the damage. The rear tire was soft, but not flat, probably a valve leak. Lucky for me, I keep a can of Fix-A-Flat in the trunk because, well, Michigan. While I was crouched down working on it, the dealership owner, a friendly older guy named Ron, walked out. "You all right there?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Just nailed a crater the size of Lake Michigan. Tires leaking." He nodded sympathetically. "Pull it up near the building. Safer there. Less likely someone will clip you." I thanked him, moved the car up, and he stuck around to help check the pressure. Real nice guy. One of those old school types who probably keeps jumper cables in his office, just in case. He even joked, "You sure you don't want to trade it for something newer? I got a shiny Malibu that doesn't flinch at potholes." We were laughing when she appeared. From the corner of my eye, I saw a woman marching toward us. About mid-40s, sharp bob haircut, sunglasses even though it was dusk. You could practically smell the entitlement before she opened her mouth. Behind her was a teenage girl, maybe 16, wearing a short skirt, a glittery top, and heels entirely inappropriate for February. The woman stomped up to my driver's window and banged on it. I rolled it down halfway. "Can I help you?" "Are you done yet?" she snapped. I blinked. "Done with what?" "Your test drive," she barked. "My daughter's been waiting her turn long enough." At first I thought it was a prank. Then I saw the smug look on the girl's face and realized she wasn't joking. "I think you got the wrong idea," I said. "This is my car." Her jaw dropped like I'd insulted her lineage. "No, it's not. I saw you pull in. You didn't even go inside to sign papers. You're trying to steal our test car." "I literally just pulled in because I had a flat," I said. "Look, I can show you." "Get out," she shrieked, yanking on the handle. Luckily, my doors were locked. "You're being ridiculous. My daughter's test driving that Camry." Her daughter piped up behind her, rolling her eyes. "Mom, it's fine. We can just—" "Quiet, sweetie," she snapped. "Don't let this woman scam you." Then she leaned halfway through my window, reaching for the keys in my ignition. That was it. I shoved her hand back out and hit the window switch. "You just assaulted me," she screamed. "I'm calling the police." Before I could even respond, Ron came jogging out. "What's going on here?" "She attacked me," Karen shrieked, "and she's stealing my daughter's car. I demand you call the police." Ron just stared at her for a second, then looked at me, then at my beat-up Camry with the faded coffee stain on the dashboard and the dog mom sticker on the back. You could practically see the gears turning in his head as he gave her a deadpan, "Lady, are you serious right now? Look." "Ma'am," he said slowly, "that car isn't for sale. It's hers." Karen gasped like she'd just been accused of tax fraud. "Lies! I saw her drive it onto the lot. She doesn't even have dealer plates." "You're just saying that because you don't want me to buy it." Ron sighed. "She came in because she hit a pothole and got a flat. She's fixing her own car." "Please step away." "No," she yelled. "My daughter deserves this car. You think I'm going to let some broke wannabe keep it from her?" I stared at her. "Lady, it's a 2008 Camry, not a Tesla." "Don't you get smart with me," she snapped. "You assaulted me. You're going to jail." "Ma'am," Ron said, "you need to leave or I'm calling the police myself." "Oh, don't bother," she sneered, pulling out her phone. "I already did." At that point, Ron leaned toward me and whispered, "This'll be good. My brother's a cop." 5 minutes later, a patrol car rolled into the lot. The second the door opened, Karen started shrieking like she was auditioning for a telenovela. "She attacked me! She tried to steal my daughter's car! Arrest her right now!" The cop, looking like he'd already had a long day, turned to Ron. "Evening, Ron. What's this about?" Ron shrugged. "She's out of her mind. The Camry's not for sale. It's hers." The cop nodded and turned to me. "License and registration, please." I handed them over without a word. He looked at them, saw the registration date, 2 years ago, my name printed clearly, and handed them back. "Ma'am," he said to Karen, "this car belongs to her." Her face twisted into disbelief. "No, that's impossible. She just drove in. You're all lying." "Ma'am," the officer said tiredly, "you understand filing a false report is a crime, right?" She froze. "You're all in on it," she hissed. "You think you can scam me because I look like I have money?" Her daughter muttered, "Mom, please, let's just go." Karen ignored her and jabbed a finger at me. "You can keep your stupid car. It's probably falling apart anyway." I leaned out the window. "Still runs better than your mouth." She went red, yanked her daughter by the arm, and stormed off toward her SUV. The cop waited until they drove off before letting out the world's deepest sigh. "People are exhausting," he muttered. "You good?" I nodded. "Yeah, just didn't think anyone would try to steal my car while I was fixing it." He smirked. "Welcome to Michigan." Then he said bye to Ron. Apparently they actually were brothers, and drove off. Ron handed me a business card. "If you ever want to trade that Camry in, I'll make sure no crazy people try to hijack the sale." I laughed. I'll keep it in mind. I drove home with my patched tire, equal parts exhausted and amused. Who in their right mind sees a random person fixing a flat and decides, "Yeah, I'll just take that car"? And for the record, my old Camry's still purring like a champ. Rust spots, dents, and all. It's still mine. And no entitled brat in 4-inch heels is ever getting behind that wheel. The audacity of this story is crazy. Imagine seeing someone fixing their own car and deciding, "Yep, that's my test drive now." Karen really thought she could will your Camry into being hers through sheer confidence. I love that the cop and Ron didn't even entertain her nonsense, just calmly dismantled her fantasy one fact at a time. You handled that like a champ, OP. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.